Hello everyone, this is the very first lesson recording for year 2021. Happy New Year! And today's date is January 4th, 2021. Since it's a new year, I want to just quickly talk about good practice to be successful in math. Please read this, and if you have any questions, come talk to me. And then we went on to talk about the prospect math track. So what comes after IM2? What happens next year? What are your math options? And then what about the year after? What's the difference between IM3 and IM3 STEM and possibly senior math and the other math courses that are offered from then on? Please come see me if you were not there and you need to ask some questions. All right, so let's get back to work. Um, so that means we are going to get back into factoring. So goal for the today is we're going to review factoring for quadratics when a is equal to 1. And then we are going to be learning a new factoring method called grouping method. So let's begin by doing some warm-up problems. Factor the following quadratic expressions and check your answers by multiplying the binomials using the FOIL method. Okay, so there are 5 questions, and this is a PADEC exercise, and you are entering your answers in this form, in the yellow box form. Okay, so please pause the video and see if you can factor x squared plus 7x plus 10 as x plus or minus something multiplied by x plus minus something. These were the last topics that we learned um, before the winter break. Okay, so please pause the video and see if you can solve them yourself. All right, so let me go over the answers now. Okay, if you recall, what do all of these quadratic expressions have in common? They're all x squared terms. The leading coefficient is 1, and they all have the degree of 2, okay? Because it's all x squared is the highest exponent. So the leading coefficient is 1, or a is equal to 1. So that means that the factored form is going to be the only way I can get x squared is if I have x here and another x here. To get x times x is x squared. Okay? And then from then on, we're looking for the multiplication of the two numbers to be 10. And when you add those two together, it's going to be positive 7. What are two numbers that multiply to 10? And when you add them together, it's going to be 7. Okay, so when you are looking for the numbers, okay, sometimes it's pretty easy. It's really straightforward. Okay, so what are the factors? Well, 1 and 10 and 2 and 5, they're the only factors. And I know that straight away 2 and 5 would work because 2 plus 5 is going to give me 7. So this will be the combination, which tells me that it's going to be x plus 2 and x plus 5 is going to be my two factors. Okay, but I also asked you to multiply it out using FOIL method and to check your answers. That means, remember, FOIL stands for first with first. F stands for first. That's first of this, the first parenthesis with the first with first, that's x squared. And then O stands for outside. This is the outside, and this is the outside. In fact, I should circle the plus sign as well. So multiply that. 5 times x is plus 5x. And then I stands for inside. That means I am multiplying plus 2 and x. Plus 2 times x is plus 2x. I am adding each of the product. And then finally, L stands for the last of the first parenthesis with the last of the second parenthesis. 2 times 5 is 10. And quickly, I add the like terms here, and I am left with x squared plus 7x plus 10, which is my original equation or expression. Okay, so I know that this is true. Okay, so I do want you to factor them, but I also want you to get good at multiplying it out using the FOIL method. Okay, so then let's go on to the second problem. All right, so then here we have x squared minus 14x plus 48. Okay, so again, I am going to start by putting in my two parentheses with x here and an x here, because the only way I can get x squared is if I have one x being multiplied to by another x. And so remember, if this is helpful, you should write down the addition and multiplication. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 48 that add to negative 14. Okay, so I'm looking for two numbers that add multiply to 48. Okay, what are the factors of 48? Well, this is a little bit more complicated because there are a lot more options than 10, right? 48 is a bigger number. That means we also have more options. Well, think of some numbers. Okay, so I know that 2, since it's even, I know that 2 and 24 would work. Would 2 and 24 work? If I add those two together, 2 and 24, the sum is going to be 26. So that is not 14. Okay, so the 2 would not work. Would 1 work? 1 and 48, if I add those, that wouldn't work. What about 3? Is 48 divisible by 3? 3 times 16 is 48, but if I add this, I get 19. So that's no good. All right, so what about 4? 4 times 12 will be 4 times 12 is 48. But if I add this, I am going to get 16. So that's no good. I want 14, not 16. All right, so then what about 5? 48 is not divisible by 5. What about 6? 6 times 8 is 48, and 6 plus 8 is 14. So, and this is the one. But now I want the sum to be negative 14. That means I need both the numbers to be negative 6 and negative 8. Okay, so it's going to be x minus 6, x minus 8. Here we go. Okay, so I factored them. Now again, I am going to check my work by multiplying out using the FOIL method. Okay, so that's the first with first. That's going to be x squared. And then O is the outside. The two outside is x, and it's not just 8, it's negative 8. So it's negative 8. And then inside is negative 6 and x. So that's negative 6x. And then finally, L stands for last with last. So that's negative 6 times negative 8 is going to be positive 48. And combining the like terms, I get x squared minus 14x plus 48, and which is indeed what we started off with. So I know that this is correct. Okay. Okay, number 3. Again, I start by putting my parentheses and putting my x's, because the only way I can get x squared is by putting the x times x here. And now I am looking for the sum to be negative 6 and the product to be negative 27. Okay, so negative 27. Okay, so that means one of the numbers have to be positive, one has to be negative. So one has to be positive and one has to be negative. I don't know which one, so I know that it's going to be either positive and negative or negative and positive. Those are my options. Okay, so let's think about, okay, what are the factors of 27, 1 and 27, or 3 and 9? If I have 3 and 9 here, Okay, what is the sum? Well, I know that one of them is going to be positive, one of them is negative. So the difference, okay, it's going to be the difference between the two has to be 6. And so 3 and 9, that would work. Okay, but we want to end up with negative 6. That means I want the bigger number to be the negative. So it's going to be positive 3 and negative 9. So I know that it's going to be positive 3x plus 3 and x minus 9. Again, I need to check my answer by doing the multiplying it out again using FOIL. First with first is going to be x squared. Outside, x times negative 9 is negative 9x. Inside is 3 times x is going to be positive 3x. And then finally, last, plus 3 and negative 9 is negative 27. And this leaves us with x squared minus 6x after combining the like term minus 27, and that is what we started off with. Okay, so now this is a different one because we actually have a negative one as the leading coefficient. Okay, it's still one, but it's negative. The easiest way to deal when the coefficient is negative, the leading coefficient, that's the number in front of the x squared term, is negative, is to take out the negative 1. So this just becomes negative, you take negative 1 out, negative 1 times x squared, and then negative 1 times it becomes, you're taking the opposite. Okay, you're taking, factoring out negative 1. Okay, so negative 1 times negative 13x is going to be positive 13x. That's what we're doing. And then you are changing this. This is negative sign, so that becomes positive sign. So that negative 1 times x squared is negative x squared. Negative 1 times negative 13x is positive 13x. Negative 1 times negative 36 is positive 36. Okay, now my brain can deal with this much easier. Okay, when I deal with negative, yeah, that gets a little bit more tricky. So then again, I am looking for the sum of the two numbers to be negative 13 and the product to be positive 36, where I start by putting my parenthesis, x here and x here. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 36, but they add to 13. Well, hopefully, as you get better at it, instead of just going through 1, 2, 3, 4, I can see what are the factors. 36, 4, and 9 would be probably the first one I would try. And if I add those together, it does give me 13. It does give me 13, but I want it to be negative 13. That means I need both the sum to be negative negative. So that negative 4 times negative 9 is going to be positive 36. So I know that it's going to be negative 4 and negative 9 here. And again, I need to multiply it out using FOIL. So first with first, that's going to be x squared. Outside, x times negative 9 is negative 9x. And the inside is negative 4 times x. That's going to be negative 4x. And then finally, last is negative 4 times negative 9 is positive 36. Notice that the negative sign in front of the number always belongs to the number that follows. Okay, you need to take those negative with it. Okay, so and then finally, combining the like term, I get x squared minus 13x plus 36, which is what I started off with. Okay, what about number 5? Well, with this problem, what do we need to do first? We need to put this into the standard form first. Okay, so this is not in standard form because the exponents are not in descending order. So I need to rewrite this as x squared, and then x to the power of 1, and then minus 36. Now I can factor. Okay, so I've already done the problem for you, where I start with by writing my parenthesis and the x's, and I'm looking for the product to be negative 36, which means I know one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. So I get -3 and +2, 12.